Hi, I'm Lowell Joseph Gallin, and I'm here again with our guest, Dr. Sam Minskoff, a practicing psychologist, formerly from California, from Los Angeles, where he worked with the Department of Children's Services and the Los Angeles Police Department. Is now
in conjunction with.
In conjunction with. He's now a practicing psychologist here in Israel. Dr. Sam, thanks for coming back on our show.
Thank you.
What is the show? We are now filming the Love Israel with Laura and Lowell interview series for the new New York-based internet TV talk show, The Laura and Lowell Show. Dr. Sam and I are going to be doing a series of interviews. This is the second, where we deal with applied psychology, I'd say combat psychology, as my father, who worked in the South Bronx from 1950 to the year 2000, called himself a combat lawyer on the street. Dr. Sam has a unique background dealing with combat psychology situations. Today we're going to be talking about when is a personality profile of a person a disorder as opposed to a style. We're going to start with left hands. I was born left-handed. By the time I came along in 1956, you didn't get beaten up by the teacher in school for using your left hand, or hit with a pencil and forced to use your right hand. 10 years earlier, you would have been. Why was using your left hand considered a disorder, and how did society, say in the United States, come to understand that using your left hand is not a disorder, it's just the way some kids are born like me? Dr. Sam.
Well, there's probably many reasons, many theories for how it came to pass that there was this old belief that there was something wrong with left-handed people. But starting with the Latin word for left, sinister, or as we say in English, sinister, which means evil, sinister villain, it's something evil, there's something wrong. And the fact that left-handed people are not as numerous as right-handed people. And a lot of teachers who are into teaching penmanship and writing would notice that the left-handed person, there was a certain hook or a certain slant. I remember when I went to school, we literally had this teacher with a ruler and had to going over the writing to make sure there was a right kind of a slant. The script or cursive writing was at a certain angle. These left-handed people, there's nothing wrong with being left-handed. It's how they were looked at, and not only that, unfortunately, many of their responses were that they took it to heart. Well, there must be something wrong with me because look at all these professionals, look at the way they're treating me, like there's something wrong. And some of them tried, and some of them succeeded to become righties, as we say, not being political, right-handed that means. And one kid in class was forced to switch from left hand to right hand, and thereafter he started to stutter. It's interesting. As time went by, luckily or fortunately, people started getting educated and realized this is not, it's not whether someone is left-handed or right-handed, it's whether someone starts with their left foot or their right foot, it's just apples and oranges. There is virtually no difference. So they realized that, that being a left-handed is not a disorder. It's the way the surrounding environment or whatever the milieu looks at it, and the way the person or the client, patient, or the subject responds to it.
Okay, what about ADHD, attention deficit? What does the H stand for?
Hyperactive.
Hyperactive disorder, and ADD, attention deficit disorder. In current thinking now, are these still regarded as disorders, or are they different styles of thinking and feeling and doing things and interacting with other people in the environment?
Okay, the answer very succinctly is yes. Resounding yes. No, I'll explain further. It was, and in many cases still is, looked as a disorder because unfortunately many schools' classrooms are not designed or not set up so that they could suitably present the information or the education to somebody who has this kind of what I call a brain style going on, which is called either ADD or ADHD. I look at it pretty much as a brain style. Not that there's something wrong with the individual who has it. What's right with them? What's right with them is that it lends itself to a gift that could be viewed as a gift called hyper-focusing, which some people may think that there's something, disorder about that. But hyper-focusing, these are the people, they'll sit there, they'll watch the same movie for hours and be able to quote every line verbatim. And they're, kids, that is, and the parents will say, that's interesting, you memorized the movie, why don't you memorize your studies? You see? Because it's all in how it's presented, it's all in how it's taken in. And a lot of times, well, the thing is with ADDs or ADHD types, they do tend to be stimulation, I'll say it, stimulation addicts. They just love to be stimulated. And, okay, in this world we can't be stimulated all the time, but that's the way it is, and they're just going to have to find ways to do it. So, for example, some kid came in the office quickly, I told him, bring your homework. And rather than spend 45 minutes on a math problem, which you'll lose them after 5 minutes, we spent 5 minutes on the math, 5 minutes on the English. We even had a little bell. In fact, he still wanted to go on, but nope, stay hungry. We moved on to history, and he learned more in 45 minutes about those lessons than the kids, the so-called, quote, non-ADD or ADHD kids in the class did. The teacher was amazed. It's all a matter of understanding what the therapy for these things, or the treatment, is for the person who has been diagnosed with it or described as it, learns about it. A lot of times they're tested. They go through these IQ tests, and they do really well, and they can't find any problem. What do you mean? You know why? Because they're getting individual attention, and the task keeps switching every 10, 15 minutes. So, to look at it, see, the problem, what I deal with I don't treat the person with ADHD per se. You can't treat that. It's a neurological issue. It's no more severe or terrible than somebody who wears eyeglasses, who needs to, basically, these are refined prisms to refract the light, so it's centered directly on the retina, and I get a sensation of clarity. And, like, for example, that's what Ritalin can do to a lot of the, ADHD or ADHD people. They've come to me and they say inside their brain they hear this shh, and they get used to it. They just assume that's how it is, and they take these medications, which I'm not totally against. We have to be careful. We have to be mindful. They are helpful. And it takes out the fuzz, and has them clearly focused on whatever mundane task that they have to get through for that day. But what I deal with is the emotional fallout, their response to it from the way they're treated. A lot of the classrooms, they say, well, look, we can't stop the class just for one little individual. I'm sorry, we have to put them in a special class with a bunch of kids who have a completely different set of circumstances and state of affairs going on with them. So there might be lumped with people who are, let's say, are learning slower for whatever reason, and they get confused. They grow up thinking they're dumb, they're stupid, they're idiots. These are the kids that, Johnny shows a lot of potential, but he doesn't seem to apply himself. He daydreams. Class clown, you see. But if it's looked upon and, as something of a gift, of an ability, and directed accordingly, and understand, and what I do is I have to educate these people and say, okay, the world is not going to go tailor-made for you. What's going to happen? You're right. You know what? You're right, and the world is wrong. Your kid, don't play games with me, doctor. I'm not. There's nothing wrong with you, and they're looking at it the wrong way. You know what? Where does that leave you? You're going to have to do something. You're going to have to change your response to them, because they ain't going to change for you.
Okay, suppose
it doesn't work. And if they look at it that way, it's not such a disorder. They get past the emotional fallout, and they're able to direct it, and they become very effective. Like, for example, many of them are successful as their own individual entrepreneurs, rather than have to work for, some in 9 to 5, which,
Right. Dr. Sam,
yeah.
Let's say I was the administrator, the principal, the headmaster of a high school, and I got to keep my school running. And these kids that you talk about take a lot of, they require more work because they don't fit in the mold. But I want to find a way to harness their super intelligence or ability to super focus. How do I do that with limited time and resources just to keep the whole system functioning from Monday till Friday till the kids go home for the weekend, so that I can keep my classes running for Joe Human, who is normal,
and the
or
teachers
follows
are
our
under pressure.
norms,
They have
and
to
the
get through
teachers,
lessons
they
at a
have
certain
times and have to correct the homework and have to read the essays and they have to file reports, And then here's Junior. What I do with Junior, I say, okay, look, Junior, you have to do certain things, but we know you have obsessions and compulsions to hyper-focus on a certain subject. What interests you? It's bubblegum. Okay, here, go to the library and research everything on bubblegum from the beginning of time. How do you help them focus and be functional without short-circuiting the whole system for everybody else?
Okay. Great question, and here's my response to that question. When you're dealing with someone with that situation, that state of affairs going on, you're not dealing with some mindless, someone who lacks a conscious type of a situation. First of all, you treat them like you would treat anybody, with respect, and respect for what's going on with them and inside of them. That's their style. You say, look, we understand the fact that you're into, how the plane flies and the propeller and all the gears, and we appreciate it, and we think that's fantastic. Okay, but we are living in the world. We can't always do what we want when we want it. Many of us have hobbies. Many of us have interests. I can't just take off in the middle of work and go to the gym. It's the ability to defer gratification.
Okay.
Let me get through the day. Let me produce or show results what I'm supposed to get. There's nothing wrong with that kind, but we have to learn to put it on hold. Okay, in so doing, if they have to learn the mundane stuff, just like if I have to read, I'm going to need aid, glasses, whatever it is it takes. Okay, for example, this one, actually a few kids, they could not study or learn unless they have music. Now, some people would find that very distracting. We're in a library right now, and it's quiet, you see. But, headphones. So this kid, he lit up. The parents are going, what? Why should he have music, and how is he going to study? I said, try it. We can always go back to the old way. Try it. He got the headphones. He was able to, listen to his music, and he went through his homework.
Yeah, I saw this when I was.
Sometimes you gotta have your toys.
When I was a business and finance reporter, not that I knew anything about either, but it was on-the-job training in the New York City Bureau of Reuters, from July to December of 1991. The first half year I was in the marketing department. Some of the reporters in our unit asked our editor, "Do you mind if we listen to music? It helps us work better." And he was from the old school, and he was from Europe, and he said, "I do mind, because that's just not the way we did it." And so they weren't allowed to listen to music. I thought that was idiotic and moronic, but in that case I had the good sense to keep my opinions to myself, because if I was running a company, the only thing that would interest me is, we have a Model T Ford factory. I don't care what goes on inside the factory. I want to know how many cars were pop out the end, and what quality, quantity and quality per month. And if you swing from the trees inside the factory, not my issue. You want to listen to music, you want to do ballet dancing or Tai Chi, just give me my car. However you do it, it should be production oriented and not system and structure oriented. Whereas for these people, it was form and not productivity. So the answer was, I'm not used to that. No music, because I don't know it. Whereas if you would have let these guys or gals listen to music on headphones, their productivity would have gone up.
Right.
But that was just over his head, period.
Right.
Unfortunately, he was too dumb. So,
well, no, there's a story.
Delayed gratification.
Yeah, well, there was a story in American history, and this doesn't advocate the use of alcohol or drugs, of course not. But General McClellan and General Grant, they were rivals, and McClellan especially wanted to run for president and beat out Abraham Lincoln at the time, and so he was tattling on Grant. He's drinking, he's drunk. Look at him, he's drinking. He has barrels of whiskey, carried by a horse. And then Abraham Lincoln sat back, because he knew that Grant was winning battles, left and right. He goes, "What brand of whiskey does he drink?" And McClellan told him what the brand was. He says, "Good, give some to all my generals."
There's a story like that, which is apparently a true story, where the British were losing to the Germans in 1942 in North Africa. And Churchill thought, I'll bring in Bernard Montgomery, let him take over the situation. Maybe he'll turn it around, which he did at the Battle of El Alamein, which was in October 1942, 60 years ago this month, I think. So some of the people around Churchill said, "But Prime Minister, Bernard Montgomery is a very disagreeable man. And Churchill's response was, perhaps he'll also be disagreeable to the Germans. And of course he was. We won. So, disagreeable people, Dr. Sam, with GIPS, it's a real art to find a way to have them work within a system without being overly disagreeable, to harness their
Well, what do you do
gifts.
with someone with a special style that that there's no niche for them? There's no place. So either you conform or be disordered. You see, because then there's something wrong. If you have to be like everybody else. It's okay. Listen, again, it's one thing. It's one thing to have the world. Okay, it's another for the world to have you. So if you're compromising your own selves, your own soul, who you are, your own identity, just to fit in, sooner or later it's going to catch up with you. You're going to wind up very bitter, maybe even physically sick. It's a way people with this kind of a style, and it's a process, but it's a brain style. It's the way a person's wired. And in the beginning, when we first learn about these things, there's always this fear that there's something wrong. And they used to think that people who were emotionally disturbed in ancient times had a demon. And they would drill holes in the skull, I think it's called trephining, to let the demon out. They found these skulls in caves where they had holes in it, and they researched it, and that was the way they treated it. You see, so in the beginning, when we get an onset of a certain brain style that somehow was undetected before, there's like, whoa, something's wrong, and they're disrupting the class. They're not functioning. They're not, they're not marching to the same beat of the drum. And so they, maybe they mean well. Problem is, people mean well. Not all of them mean very well, or there's just too much on the teacher's, nerves, or they don't have the temperament for it. But what do? The teachers, they have a program. They have to get through. And they got this disruptive influence in the class. Okay? Well, now we're more educated. The thing was, you get the kid, I hate to use the word, examined. You send the kid to a shrink, maybe to a clinical psychologist even, although they're both, whichever. And you talk to the kid, and basically when these kids come to me, I pretty much educate them on the fact there's nothing wrong with them, but they are with a bunch of people who think that they're not really getting where they're at. That's no excuse to be rebellious, or to be smug, or to go around and do what you want. They have to learn a special lesson on top of, let's say, people who are not experiencing this ADD or ADHD phenomenon, to take care of themselves.
Well, you mean the people who have it, not the administrators or teachers who have to deal with them.
I'm going to say, look, you're dealing with a world who doesn't get you. Don't take it personally. That's hard not to. So, okay, gee, that's easier said than don't take it personally. What do you mean? They call me stupid, retarded, lazy, no good. Well, that's why they'll come into a counseling or a consulting situation, really, because traditional psychotherapy doesn't always work with ADHD simply because they don't need that, unless they have the accompanying emotional problems as a result of it from the way they were treated as such. Low self-esteem. And a lot of times they're relieved by understanding, no, you're just in a situation, you're in an environment that's not designed. That they're asking you, it's like telling the left-handed person to function in a right-handed desk. The kind of desk that used to curve over. It's difficult for them until finally, when they found out there's nothing wrong, and they have a desk now that's ambidextrous, oriented, nobody thinks anything of it. So ADD, ADHD, Asperger's, or the autism, similar kind of that psychoneurological stuff that kind of goes on, in the beginning, oftentimes gets, I think, pathologized.
Right.
And if looked at as a brain style, treat it in a respectful sort of way, and give them the tools to deal with a world that doesn't get them.
Right.
So that they can contribute.
Dr. Sam, thank you very much for this discussion. We're looking forward to the next one, and we thank our audience for watching and listening, and have a great day.